Hey, everybody, welcome to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is the place where I am going to help you find the one thing that you feel is missing: healthy love. I am your host, Lauren Zoeller, and in this podcast, I will share with you how to attract love, live in alignment, and elevate your deepest relationships. So buckle up, get present, tune into your body, and open up to the possibility that you truly do get to have it all. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the next episode of the Aligned Love Podcast. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. It has been a while since I have done an update solo episode. I know that I did one a few weeks ago with Lily talking about a poll that was posted on my Instagram story, but I haven't actually hopped on here and given you a life update in a while. So I'm excited to dive in today to let you guys know what I've been up to, but to also chat about this question that I continue to get over and over and over again, which is, how did you know that you were ready to date after the ending of your last relationship? I get so many questions about this. Many of you ask me, how do I know that it's time? Or how did I know that it was time? And also, how can you figure out if it's the right time for you to date? And also, what's the difference between knowing in your heart that it is time to get back out there and also being really scared and feeling like it's not the time? How do you differentiate between those two and know what's really in alignment for you? Before we even jump into that, I want to give you guys a little bit of a life update. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're actually seeing me in the flesh, you will see that I am in a baseball hat, and you can't see me from the waist down, but I'm in my pajamas. I'm not in my normal background because I'm actually in Palisade, Colorado, getting ready to speak on Friday at a retreat here in Palisade. We are at this beautiful winery, and I cannot wait. I was invited to this retreat to speak, and I'm also getting to just be surrounded by the beautiful Colorado mountains, which is a very, very, it's funny. It feels like it's a full circle moment because the mountains have always been very healing for me. And as many of you know, I lived in Denver for the past year and a half before my last relationship ended and I moved back to Nashville. So coming back to Colorado, Palisade in particular, because it was always on our list to go to, we never went. But I flew into Denver. But coming back to Colorado in general has been an even deeper layer to the healing process that I've been going through over the past couple of months post-breakup. I feel like I left Denver in such a rush. And, hindsight is 2020. Looking at it, may have been a little bit of a trauma response to get myself out of the current situation that I was in. I wanted to get back to familiarity as soon as I could so that I could start the healing process. And I want to say that that's a really big component. If you're in a really difficult transition in your life, something that I have noticed, and I also lead my clients to notice and orient towards when they're in a big transition, is looking at what does feel familiar. What can you start to orient towards that does feel familiar? Because when there is a lot of transition and a lot of upheaval in your life, letting yourself kind of, again, orient towards or guide yourself towards something that feels familiar can start to bring some safety on board so that you can begin to dive deep into the healing process. And so when I left Denver, my brain was, okay, what's familiar? What feels safe? And to me, getting back to Nashville and being surrounded by family, being surrounded by friends, being surrounded by familiarity, being able to go to the yoga studio that I always went to and having my best friends at my fingertips and actually getting in the car and knowing where the heck I was driving to, that felt like the little bit of safety that I needed to be able to start really diving into the healing process. So I know I'm going a little bit on a tangent, but I just wanted to say that part of the reason that I left Denver in such a rush was because I wanted to get back to that familiarity so that I could have something to anchor into, because I knew that I was going to go through a wave of really deep emotions. So if that's you and you're listening and you're going through a big transition and you feel like you can't get your footing and you're riding all these waves, something that I would suggest that you do is to start to ask yourself, what do I know is familiar? What do I know is safe? And can I actually allow myself to orient towards those things so I can have some sort of an anchor as I ride these really big emotional waves that come with transition? So, full circle, I left Denver in a rush when my last relationship ended. And when I left in a rush, I also left all of the relationships that I had built in Denver behind because my source and my safety was number one. And I did feel this sense of, I just felt incomplete. I felt like it was almost like missing a period at the end of the sentence. So when I came to Denver a few days ago, I was very intentional about connecting with the people that I felt like I just rushed to Nashville and left behind. So this trip to Denver and then making my way into Palisade has been a much deeper layer in the healing journey that I really couldn't have expected how much it would bring peace. I thought that it was just going to be a stop on my way to speak at this event. And it really was a full circle moment for me. So want to talk a little bit about that because when I'm asked that question, first off, people have been asking me, are you dating again? How did you know it was time to date? And the answer is yes, I am dating again. I'm out into the dating world and I've been on a few dates with really wonderful men. And when I made my way to Nashville and I started to settle into some of that familiarity, because I knew to anchor into that, I also gave myself permission to grieve and to grieve fully. I was in therapy post breakup 2, sometimes 3 times a week. I was seeing my somatic practitioner. I was really working with a lot of stuff that was coming up. But I'll say, part of me in that relationship, I grieved the ending of the relationship while I was actually in the relationship. I believe that I was having a conversation with my friend who's leading this retreat here in Palisade. We were having this conversation last night that part of my pattern and what I do inside of partnership is like I have this realization that something isn't working and that something isn't meant for me, but yet I try to make, and I've said this a lot, I try to make a square peg fit into a round hole. And I discount what I know inside of my soul is true because it feels uncomfortable. And I think many of us do this, right? Many of us know that there is a truth to a certain situation, whether you're in a career that doesn't feel comfortable or you're in a relationship that doesn't feel comfortable, that version of the relationship or the version of the person that you are in the career that you're in or the person that you are in your current health state, that it has to transform, that it has to become a new identity. And oftentimes we will stick our heels in the ground and not make forward progress because it's scary. And I believe that was very true for me in my last partnership. And because of that, part of me mourned the ending of that relationship before it actually ended. So when I got to Nashville, it's funny, my friends make fun of me. One of my girlfriends told me, something that was really helpful for me when I was grieving the loss of my mother was that I would actually schedule time on my calendar to grieve. And I thought she was crazy. And when I told some of my other friends about this, that I was going to do this, they laughed at me. But I'll tell you that this was hands down one of the most profound exercises that I gave myself in giving myself space to really grieve the ending of this relationship when it ended and allowing myself to fully feel the roller coaster of emotions that went with it. I started scheduling time on my calendar to actually grieve. And it's funny when you do it at first, when you have a full hour that is on your calendar and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I have nothing on my calendar. I'm supposed to be sad now. But what's funny is that my nervous system and my body started to look forward to having that uninterrupted time where I could just sit and read, or I could sit and journal, or I could sit and cry. And part of that process allowed these really deep emotions to make their way to the surface. And I think that the biggest hurdle for me in healing post relationship was that I was really grieving the idea that I had created about what this relationship meant. I was grieving what the relationship represented versus the actual relationship itself. And that was a really big eye-opening moment for me, because I had to get really honest with myself about what I didn't listen to when I entered into the relationship and when I stayed in the relationship. So part of that process and being able to work through that with my somatic practitioners and my therapist really got me to this place where I remember I woke up one morning, because I would always ask myself every single morning, and I give this to my clients a lot too, and I suggest that you do this if you're asking the question, how do I know when it's time to date? Every morning, I would wake up and I would ask myself, how would it feel to go on a date right now? And there were many mornings where I would then check in with my body. And when I say that, how would it feel to go on a date right now? What I'm actually listening to is, what sensations do I notice inside of my body when I ask myself that question? And if I notice sensations that are ridden with anxiety, fear, dread, I know that it's not time to actually go back out there and date someone. But because I know the language of my body and of my nervous system, I'm able to speak that language and truly know if it's coming from a place of fear, if it's coming from a place of dread, if it's coming from a place of anxiety, versus when I ask that question, is it coming from a deep survival response? Is it coming from something that I haven't looked at that's making its way to the surface? So when I was asking myself this question, there were many days that it felt really scary. It felt really dreadful. It felt really ridden with anxiety. I couldn't even imagine being in the presence of another man. It was too much. I didn't feel safe. And there was one day, and I can remember it vividly because it was a Wednesday afternoon. I woke up and I remember I went and I worked. For whatever reason, I didn't do my check-in and my meditation until later that day. I think I had a podcast interview that morning. And I remember asking myself that afternoon, how would it feel to date again, to date right now? And I remember feeling, for the first time, since I've been asking myself that question for weeks on end, I remember feeling a glimmer of excitement. Like, oh, actually, it feels exciting. It feels exciting to get to know someone else. It feels exciting to think about experiencing new things with someone. It feels fun. It feels playful. It feels all these emotions that were grounded in safety started to come in. And the first time that I started to feel it, I was like, okay, that's nice. Let me orient to it. Not going to take action right now. I'm not going to open a dating app. I'm not going to go blast to the world that I'm ready to date. I'm just going to sit with it. I'm going to see if it feels that way tomorrow. And then 2, 3, 4 days later, that feeling of excitement, that feeling of joy, that feeling of ease was still there. And so I knew at that point, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to do this. And I'll say this, that I just want to put this disclaimer out there that this process is so different for every single person. I have been learning and diving into and absorbing the language of my nervous system for years now. Years. I know how to listen in. I know how to tune in. I know the difference between the survival response and feeling safety in my body. I also know when I'm triggered and how to sit in those emotions and to question them and to get curious about them. So the time span between the ending of the relationship and me feeling ready to date again felt collapsed this go around because I was able to speak that language so well. And I also knew while I was in the relationship and then post relationship, what I needed to do to fully grieve and not suppress the emotions and run back into the dating world. I really gave myself time to process and to sit and to be with what came up as a result of that relationship ending, because there were so many beautiful things in that relationship. And that was part of my healing process too, was being able to celebrate those parts while also simultaneously holding this deep grief that was there. And I'll say that I have been very open and honest and getting back out into the dating world and dating again about where I am. And there are moments that I still have waves and I'm with them. Luckily, I have been on dates with men who are very conscious and open and aware, and I can have conversations about that. But I'll say that most people come to me and they want to know that exact moment when they should start dating again. And the answer is that it is so different for every single human and every single nervous system. Years ago, when I was really doing a lot of the deep work and understanding my relational ruptures and learning the language of my nervous system, I didn't really know the difference between a survival response and a safety response. The gap was much bigger. And in that bigger gap, I would do things to cope with certain triggers. I was the girl that would immediately hop back on the dating apps and would start to swipe because it was filling this void that, okay, well, if someone else goes on a date with me, then I'm wanted. And that flight response of opening up the dating app and starting to swipe and booking dates would pacify that deep survival response that was needing external validation from someone else. And so being aware of that, knowing how that lands in my body, gave me the ability to get curious and heal that part of me. And as I've grown and evolved, and as this relationship ended, I noticed that urge wasn't there. And if it was there, because sometimes they do creep back up, it was not as loud. And I was able to decipher, is this coming from this space of flight where I need to be needed? Or is this coming from the anxiety that I can just sit with and know that it will pass? And I can orient towards, oh, wait, maybe it actually feels exciting to put myself back out there. Maybe the dating apps don't feel good right now, right? So just being able to speak that language is going to help you navigate when it's time for you to feel ready to really get back out there and get back into the dating world. I have a lot of people that will also, I do a Q&A every week on my Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, go there, ask your questions. I usually answer as many as I can. This has been a little bit of a wonky week because I've been traveling. But I will say that I always get the follow-up question when I talk about when are you ready to date again? I'm so frozen. I feel like I've been trying to date for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and I just can't get myself to do it. And I'll say that if that's you, this is a sign that there's quite a bit of freeze on board in your system. And we're going to want to start to work with that. So this is your calling. Come into one of my containers. Come into the collective program. Reach out to me on Instagram. Let's get you some support, because dating should feel fun. It should feel easy. It should feel enjoyable and exciting. But yet when we've had so much trauma around relationships in our past, dating can often feel extremely paralyzing and can send you into a free state where you don't take any action. And even though in your heart you desire deep partnership, you desire having that with someone, it feels like death to actually get out there and meet someone and put yourself out on the dating apps. So if that's you, this is your nudge. It shouldn't feel like that. And there is a way out of it. You can start to thaw and come back into safety. Dating can feel fun. It can feel exciting again. So that's a little bit about my update and how I knew that it was time to start navigating back into the dating world. I've been having a lot of fun dating and getting out there again and getting to experience new things. I've been diving into country swing dancing, which has been a lot of fun and has been teaching me a lot about letting a man lead, even if it's on the dance floor, which has been a really fun, exciting experience. I actually just, prior to coming to Colorado, I was in Vegas for 10 days doing a series of podcast recordings, which I'm really excited about. I did a couple of interviews for the Align Love podcast. So there's going to be some new expert live interviews coming out. And then I was also interviewed on some friends' podcasts, on Tori Gordon's podcast. on Michael Unbroken's podcast. So there's some really amazing information coming your way on the Align Love podcast, and then also as me, the guest expert on other podcasts, which I'm really excited to share with you guys. But I've been doing so many fun new things that feel really outside of my comfort zone. And that has been helping me a lot and really transitioning into, okay, what actually does feel fun again? What does feel enjoyable? What do I want to go out there and do? And what activities do I want to be involved in that I would potentially do with my future partner that I can enjoy now? And that's, I'll say this, and we'll kind of wrap this up for today, because I wanted to just to give you a quick overview of where I am and really answer this question, because I know a lot of my followers, a lot of my listeners really struggle with orienting towards dating again post breakup. But I'll say this, if you're one of the people that is out there saying, oh my gosh, how do I meet people? Dating apps feel overwhelming. Hiring a matchmaker feels overwhelming. One of the most profound things that I have done for myself, and is now something that I am actively preaching, and I've always preached it, but really actively preaching for my current clients inside of my containers, is that you don't have to be on a dating app. You don't have to hire a matchmaker. You don't have to go blast to the world that you're single. If you can figure out your hobbies and your activities, things that you would really love to do with the person that you spend the rest of your life with. Maybe it's country swing dancing. Maybe it's getting to know more about wine, or joining a book club, or joining a running club, or joining a cooking class, or joining a mastermind, a personal development group. Think about the things that you would want to do with your future partner, and then go do those things. I have been meeting amazing men doing things that I love to do. And in this day and age where dating apps they're overwhelming. A lot of people are getting off of them because it doesn't feel authentic. People want to meet. I think one thing that COVID did was that it really pushed us to reconnect with each other once it was over. A lot of people are navigating off the apps. And so get out there and start to live. And if that feels overwhelming, if that feels scary, if that feels like it's too much, this is your sign right now. And I want you to hear this. This is your sign to reach out for help, because it shouldn't feel that way. And I promise you that there is someone out there that will be for you. And the more that you can start to orient towards that and really allow yourself to come into safety in your body and get out there to have these types of interactions, the more that you begin to become a magnet for the things that you desire. And this is what I teach in all of my programs. So I'd love to invite you into that, but just know that it doesn't have to feel so hard. And there is a reality that does exist where you can go through a breakup, you can heal, you can grieve, you can feel excited again, and you can start to get back out there regardless of your age, right? Whether you are 25, 35, 36, 40, 45, 50, 70, there is no timeline. I know society places timelines on us, but that's society. The truth is, you can have what it is that you deeply desire. The key to having it is being able to truly understand the language of your nervous system, to orient and be able to embody safety so that you can become a magnet for the things that you desire in your life. So I hope that today's episode was helpful and also gave you a little bit of insight of where I am and where things have been going over the past couple of weeks. I make my way back to Nashville towards the end of the month. We have a new collective group of women that are starting. 21 of you said yes to this program, which I'm super stoked about. I have some really exciting announcements that are coming in the next couple of months that you're going to want to hang tight and be a part of. But I'm just so grateful to be here. And I love all of you so much. Thank you so much for the kind words. And know that if you were listening to this podcast, if you follow me on Instagram, if you're on any of my platforms, you are family and I love you dearly. So make sure, if you liked this episode, to leave me a comment and give us a 5-star rating so that we can continue to get this podcast out to more people. And make sure that you stay tuned next week for an expert interview that I can't wait for you guys to hear. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And I hope that this update gave you insight into what's been going on over the past couple of months. Love you guys so much. See you next week. That wraps up today's episode of the Aligned Love Podcast. One thing that would really help me and the other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in and listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on Instagram at Lauren Zoeller, and please share this podcast with anyone who you think may enjoy it. Until next episode, remember, every transformation begins with one moment of awareness, and I hope today has been yours. I'll see you next time.